It's fall, y'all, and you cannot let this season go by, and we always do. The next few videos, you're going to see that that's a reoccurring theme that we have, is this is the absolute best time to plant anything on the Gulf Coast.
Certainly is. This is our longest and best gardening season.
It is.
And I really, it's referred to often as our second spring.
Right.
Really, we should kind of think of it as the Texas spring, at least down here on the Gulf Coast.
No, I agree 100%. And now with the interest, so many people are interested in growing their own food, even a limited amount. But just having that fresh produce, there's, people say, which tastes the best? Have you ever had a bad fresh fruit picked off the bush or the tree or the vine?
Not really, and you're right. That's what people say, well, which one do you like best? The one I'm currently eating. That's the one I like the best.
Exactly. Well, one of the easiest to grow, very productive. The kids will love it. It's a great one to get the whole family involved, is blueberries. But people do struggle with them here. And one great way to achieve success is growing them in a container.
Yeah, growing them in a container is a really good reason for several things. Number one, blueberries prefer a lower pH, and most of our soils are not. We're in that 8.0 to above range, which doesn't keep them happy.
Right.
You can amend your ground soil, but it's a constant effort, and it can be a little challenging, especially if you want to grow multiple varieties of something. So if you do it in a container, then it makes it very easy to manage the pH of the soil, the moisture of the soil, the good quality of the soil. Everything is possible in a container.
Right, and you can easily find its happy spot. If you've got in one place the location that it did great through the fall and spring, but then the summer heat hit, and we might need to move it a little more afternoon shade.
We really might. Blueberries do the best in morning sun, which is basically our eastern exposure. They don't do well when we have that harsh southwestern exposure in the afternoon. So you can locate them pretty much anywhere through fall, winter, and spring. They don't need winter protection.
Right.
Keep them out in that. And then when we have that few months of July, August, the really hot temperatures, they can be moved into a semi-shade location under the edge of a tree. Not full shade, but just someplace where they get that morning sun exposure and they get a little relief in the afternoon.
Right. Now, there are so many varieties available to us now, and these bushel and berry series that have come out, or I think that's right, bushel and berry. These are great compact plants, heavy producers, and great in the garden, in the bed, but these are perfect for the container.
It's really true. Some of the varieties of blueberries do have a tendency to get tall and lanky and kind of have bare knees, sort of like some of our beloved shrub roses.
Yes.
But these landscape blueberries do stay tight and full, and so they're a pretty shrub in the garden, even when they're not blooming and producing fruit.
Right. So self-fruitful means a lot as well.
Yes, it does. Most of the time you need cross-pollination, so you need more than one variety. So anything that's self-fruitful eliminates that concern.
Exactly. Now, when we plant, we're going to, of course, use Arborgate Soil Complete as a perfect blend to get these going.
Yes, it is. Like all things, they're naturally a woodland plant.
Okay.
So they like a humusy, moist soil, and there's plenty of wonderful compost in the soil, but they also need air to the roots, good aeration.
Right.
Not just proper drainage, but good oxygen exchange or air exchange between the soil and the atmosphere. And so they get that in that soil because it stays loose, it has a lot of good pore space. It's just a perfect soil for the blueberries.
So if I was going to buy this 3-gallon container, and then want to plant it into a container, which size pot do I choose? How do I decide what to go?
Yeah, it really is a good issue. So let's talk about this. This is a 7-gallon. And what we're really looking for is about 2 inches larger than the container it's in right now.
All right.
And the reason for that is we want it to have room to expand, and blueberries are somewhat shallow rooted, and we want to keep that in mind. But if we overpot it into a pot that's too large for it, when we water that, the soil that doesn't have any roots in it is going to hold water, and that's just a place to foster all kinds of issues that we'd like to avoid. So if we do what we call stepping up, which means that we'll step that pot up into a 7-gallon, and then we go from there into a 10 or 15 gallon. You can see that when I slide these together that we've got about that 2 inches all the way around of it to be able to expand. And that's really what you're looking for. And just think of it as stepping up as the plant grows and you see that it's becoming a little root bound.
Okay, so typically that's probably what, 2 to 3 years at the top?
It is 2 to 3 years.
That you're going to be bumping up to the next size?
Yes, and some of our standard blueberries, you may end up, I grow them in very large containers, about 17 by 17, and not too terribly deep. So if you your larger standard blueberries, after a few years, you may have them in as much as a 20 or 25, and they can stay there for the rest of their lives.
Okay. Now, as far as maintenance, do we need to prune on these guys?
We do need to prune, but we don't need to prune as often as people think we do. So one of the best things to do, if you want to keep them tight and full and bushy, then they can be tip pruned after they've completed production in the spring.
Okay.
That's a good time. Then your other maintenance pruning is going to be about once a year. Look and see, are there any canes that have gotten overgrown and extra woody?
Right.
They need to be trimmed out because they lose productivity. That's your only pruning. So it doesn't require a lot of heavy pruning like many fruits do.
Now, what about fertilization?
Fertilization is important. We share this philosophy of providing some fertility all year long.
Right.
Nature doesn't take nutrients out of the soil for the winter.
Yes.
The difference is when we use synthetics, we artificially push plants.
Right.
But when we use solid organics, then it allows the nutrients to be available when the temperature and the soil moisture are beneficial to the plant. That's how nature works. So all we're doing is replicating nature by providing natural nutrients for the plant.
And then what about soil acidity? Everybody is every time they buy a blueberry, they immediately want to go buy a pH meter.
Right. And that's not really going to help you a whole lot. You have to, there are ways to take pH tests, but using the meter is not always good because soil contact, moisture level, all of that makes a difference. So the blueberry will actually tell you when it's unhappy. It's going to start yellowing, so it kind of just says, I need some help here. And that's generally a good sign that it's time to provide both fertility and a little bit of acidification.
I'm so glad you said that because I always tell them, your plant's going to tell you what it needs.
They tell you when they're unhappy. It's like having a child.
Exactly.
So I particularly like this because it's a sulfur pastille, and so it's kind of a granulated product, and it's real easy to put out.
Right.
You can put this out into the mix several times a year. Just follow the directions depending on the size of your container. But this is a good one. And then for generations, sulfur dust has been around for gardeners. It's used for several things, but one of them is for the acidification of the soil as well.
Right.
And again, just follow the instructions for the size of the container.
Perfect. Well, you make it sound oh so easy.
Well, it can be. Just start in the fall.
That's right.